the first of the panels on a new book that I have had the honor and the privilege to collaborate with to produce Value of Hawaiʻi, third volume, Hulihia, The Turning. And this afternoon we have, or this morning, we have four of the authors who will be presenting and speaking about their essays, about their work with this book, but also the work that they do, the significant work that they do in the community. And I'm going to introduce them now. My name is Jonathan Osorio. I am currently the Dean of the School of Hawaiian Knowledge at Wailuanui at UH Manoa, and a professor of Hawaiian Studies for 25 years. We have four amazing panelists who will be presenting today. And I'm going to begin with two younger people whose work I have become familiar with, in part because of this book, but in part also because of the activism and the work they do in the community. Kuʻulani Muise, she is a mother and a writer. She's also an illustrator. She has been working on Maui along with her family. She has this amazing company that does what is called holoʻai, which is basically moving food to where people and communities can partake. It's really an āina-centered kind of activity. We have with us also today, and will be in this order that I'm introducing the people in the order that they will be presenting, Loke Aloua. I saw Loke speak at the 2019, I'm going to say, NISA in Waitangi. She spoke articulately and passionately and very persuasively about Mahakea and the need to stop the telescope on that mountain. You know, she is from Kona, Hawaii. She is a Kaloko Loko, which means she's a guardian of fish ponds and food production. She's also an amazing poet, and they'll both be presenting their poems this morning. I'm going to ask Kuʻulani to go first because her poem, A Prayer Lifting, is the very first offering of this book, Value of Hawaiʻi, Hulihia, The Turning. Kuʻulani, it's my pleasure to introduce you to this audience.
Aloha nui mai tākou. Honored to be here with all of you, and mahalo to Aiko Yamashiro who sent out the kono of aloha. She invited me into this new realm, so mahalo Aiko. Okay. A prayer lifting. Hulihia is an integral energy in our cosmologies, a natural cycle in our land, sea, sky, dreamscapes, and manifests again and again in our histories. In looking at these cycles, there is always a reciprocal and inherent energy that works in consort with Hulihia, which is the Kulia energy. So entwined are the two that we cannot speak to one without beginning to name the other. Implicit in every upheaval is the rising, is a flowering up of something new. We began in a turning, over and over in the night before night. A friction enkindled, a heat. Turned out of this turning, out of the lipo black, the lipo blue, roiling the shape of an island heaped and hissing from the sea. A steam rising, a prayer lifting, a prayer for rain. A conjuring of cloud, of dog clouds, blue and red running on the sea, of the short cloud, the tall cloud, the long, finding finally the face of the new mountain, a place to bring their carried waters, then a torrent, a rending of squall across the ridge, rivulets, streams, rivers, water settling into courses, a weathering of rock, the long work of softening, the thick quiet of soil, and up out of the new earth, an unfurling green, o kupu, a promise of forest. How many turnings went after? The first sound of footfall under the trees, a flurry of wings, millennia of hands turning soil, moving stones, invoking all the forms, lau mano kini lehu. Then big ships in the bay, mouths of men and of women together, eating and unnaming of all the forms, the toppling of all the stones, disease, and a great dividing of ground, overthrowing, overturning, a vast and devised forgetting of the stories and their words. We began again in a turning, over and over, a bombs rupturing earth of stone dust and ash. Turned out of this turning, out of the lipo black, the lipo blue, their boat sliding on the dark water, reflecting the stars, Wākea o makaliʻikapo, and up into the dark shape of the island, a procession of 9. The ʻāina, kanaloa, their aliʻinui, the coconut broken open, the stars fed, a prayer lifting, a prayer for rain. A conjuring of cloud, of the naulu flying furious across the water, of thick clouds, of bomb-blocking clouds, and everywhere a new rain pouring down, uaka uaka hikawai, a rain for remembering, for washing away the thick net of forgetting, rain filling mouths, turning them lush with olelo, an ad's head rain, opening the earth, finding generations of buried seeds, o imi imi o nalo wale o loa ae. Up out of the newly turned ground, multitudes of fronds, greenly lifting together, standing, growing, building, o kupu kupu, a promise of forest. Nake aloha kono akula, hele maila e.
Our next offering will come from Loke, and Loke's poem, Wida Vai Vai, just captures everybody's attention almost from the very, very beginning. You cannot read this without wanting to hear it. And so, Loke, if you wouldn't mind reading your poem, Wida Vai Vai.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Wida vai vai. Mo'oku au hau. Who you? Where you from? Who me? I went hoapili. Kauoha bound kia itu loko, and oath you can't let go. No, vai vai stirs the soul. Mahiia, when the fish we raise is for loko kanaka and kanaloa. Hui, my poina. No, forget those old ways. Papa told me, no can eat money. Kapu kanaloa. Remember that pilina, held on through change by kupuna doing onslaught of foreign ways. Where kia iste? Menehune, early morning, late night, cloaked by darkness, removing evasives, protecting Kanaloa. It's a constant fight, choking vai vai. Like foreign badge, ranger laws, authority, bar us from setting vai vai, us kia'i, our ea, free. Someone yells, hold, duck low, look the flashlight, and just one Leviathan passing by. Those other guys, they don't scare me. Lock us up, throw away the key. We are kia'i. Kani kapu, dig deep, feet kiss, kele kele, feel Papa's heartbeat. Removing decades of lepo when our people were forced to leave. Plugging kuna vai, bugger no can breathe, it no can breathe, how you gonna eat? No vai, no vai vai. Vai vai calls on our courage to have foresight. Discipline for hard times, bigger than I for we. Reclaiming hands to ʻāina, touch her tenderly, mindfully. That vahi you feel, that's us. We are ʻāina. She is we. Hu lali lali, living kahiko, birthing mo'olelo, creators our story will be told. Names unleashed beneath cold trees, salty mist coats lips, sweat drips. Mo'o slither on blankets of yellow heart leaves while a'ama clean ku aside. Those stones we stack, no wait for permits and permission to act. We are Kaiaulu, we are taking our Hawaiʻi back. Ho'ai lona, I see a shimmering sea, filled with vai vai old timers speak. One throw, pow fish, go home, share, cow, ow, sleep. Nobody go hungry. Life is sweet. Take what need, set the rest free. Nets rip from big fish, not catching pohaku in an empty sea. Va'au reclaiming ocean side, ko of bed regenerating. Limu blossoming beyond the maka can see. Bugger form one thick sheet. Those fisheries that sound so vai, no can believe. That's where we're going to be, but you got to believe, have the courage to dream. Remember the mo'olelo, those kupuna who made we. We are vai, dream.
Our next speaker then is Mahealani Perez Wendt. She was the executive director of Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation for many, many, many years. Her career precedes that and exceeds that as well. Through all of this, she has been a poet and activist. If you Google her, you will see so many awards and recognition for the work that she's done in the community that'll make you wonder what the hell you've been doing with your life. She is the author of Uluhai Malama, which is a collection of poems that she put together in 2007. And I'm just going to read one part of the essay that she wrote for us, and just as a way of introducing her, and I hope that's all right. I Can't Breathe has become America's national mantra. For many Kanaka, this is indistinguishable from the loss of our country, and just as wounding, a loss also rooted in white America's obdurate insistence on privilege and exceptionalism. With these words, I introduce Mahealani Perez Wendt, from now on Maui.
Aloha. I don't have a prepared presentation at all. But I'm so glad that you began with those words. First, I want to respond to the poets. I felt as though I've been reading again, and I do it periodically. I've been reading again the Kumulipo, and I've also been reading Iaka o Ikapole o Pele, and I just feel such a deep connection. It's as though those poems have come forward to reflect our generation and our time. And I want to thank the poets. They're beautiful. And the reason why I say I'm glad you began with that excerpt is because as I was listening to the poems, both of Kuʻulani and Loke, I felt that what I wanted to say was I feel very little evolved as an activist. And that is principally because we have not yet succeeded in having our country restored to us. And that is a great sadness, a very heavy burden. But I had hoped that after a lifetime of activism, of pressing for the return and restoration of our political sovereignty, that we would be far ahead at this time. It's not enough for me to be told that our sovereignty is still intact, that we as a people still have our sovereignty. It's not good enough for me. And I'll tell you why it's not good enough for me. Because at the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation, we operated at sort of a macro level. And it gave me an insight into many of our communities. And I could see that they were all coming up against the same tyrant. And of course, we know who that is. That's America. My privilege of being able to now reside in a very a small rural traditional community has only validated my belief that we need to press even stronger for return of our country. It's not good enough. I appreciate that our language is back. I appreciate the greater insights that we have, because now we can look back at what our kupuna actually were able to articulate, not only through the oral tradition, but what they were able to express in the newspapers. I appreciate that we have health programs. I appreciate all of that. But we haven't gotten far enough. And I started talking about my mother. I was hoping that by the time my mother passed, we would at least have made some progress. But I don't feel that. And I'm mad because I'm angry because I believe that I'm going to pass before this ever happens.
Chuck Lawrence, as I said before, was just recently retired from the political science and Richardson Law School here at UH Manoa, where he was a professor in both those departments since 2008. He was a tenured professor at Georgetown and also at Stanford, and you know, I'm certain that what drew him to Hawaii was not just the fact that Maori wanted to come home, but also that, you know, the amazing things that are happening here in Hawaii, and he threw himself right into the fray in Hawaii and became really, really involved in the training of young academics in critical race theory and in the activism for the pursuit of social justice.
I think I should start by saying how really honored and gifted I feel by the way the Kanaka Maoli community has welcomed me, has really hanai'd me as I've come to this place. And I think that's really what, you know, my essay in this volume begins in my own experience here with so many people, you know, just as this, even on this panel, I'm the lone settler, a settler who comes also, as Mahealani said, as a person who is in this collective community of people who've been plundered and exterminated and exploited by American empire. And I think that one of the things that is, you know, that was really powerful to me about both Ku'u's and Loke's poems is this this way that we're at this point where we've really always been, and I try to say this in my essay, that we've always been in a time of both upheaval and rising, of things falling apart and things growing at the same time. It's not just this common oppression. It's not just a struggle for sovereignty that brings these two movements and puts us in relationship with one another, but it's this genealogy of common struggle that we learn from each other, that we turn to the genealogies of our struggle going all the way back to Kanaka ancestors, to slave ancestors who have always been struggling in this struggle, right? Who've always been, you know, I mentioned that the very act of escaping to slavery was a theft of property that countered, you know, that said, you know, I will not be your property. And that this was something that was, you know, talk about empire, it was actually written into the Constitution, the making of property out of people, in the same way that the Mauna is made property to be owned by someone else. Not even just occupied and taken away in terms of who the state is, but actually profaned and made into property in the same way that human beings were made into property. And that is what Hawaiians are contesting when they're at the Mauna. So there were so many of these powerful ways, and I just want to thank John and Noe and the editors of this thing, and thank all of you all for bringing me into your ohana and pushing me to think about these things in this way, and being there in our struggle, and and trusting me to be in yours.
I want to return back to Mahealani at this point, because you know, what struck me about your words this morning is you know, that impatience with it. It's not just the fact that we are not yet really politically sovereign. We are not where we wanted to be. It's also that impatience with the continuing insinuation, from white America that justifies this continual oppression of our people and our lands. And I think that this is clearly a panel of I'm going to say younger people who are already tremendously accomplished and absolutely rooted in this struggle, and older people who have been doing this for a long period of time. And I think that one of the things that we may actually have in common is that we are at a moment when that impatience may actually drive change. Mahia.
Well, listening to Loke at the fish pond is, only strengthens my resolve. And also, both what Kuʻulani and Loke had to say are so valid. And I look at you, Loke, on site, and I think about how it would be if you were prevented from going there, if that was taken from you, if that beautiful place where you commune with our people, our kupuna, if all of that was taken from you, where would you be? Where would our people be if this diabolical sort of systemic way of separating us from the things that are important for us to be Hawaiian, where would we be and where will we be? And that is my concern. My concern isn't for the physical Hawaii. My concern is that our people have lived here and evolved in an organic way. Many of our communities have happily and luckily been able to continue engaging in their traditional practices with very little interference. The least amount of interference is right over here, I think, in spite of the fact that all of their resources were diverted away. I always think of Hawaii as one of those special places that has so much to offer to the world for its own salvation, because of the very thing that you described, that we can sit there, we are still close to our kupuna. We have so much to offer. The wisdom is still there. The communion is still there. The āina is still there. But if we have to continue to live in a state of siege because the things we require to be Hawaiian are taken from us, or we're prevented from being in those places, as happened and continues to happen, then I worry. I worry not only for us as a people, I worry for us as a planet. And I've always felt that way. I've always felt that we as a people, indigenous peoples, we deserve to exist. We deserve to be a people. We deserve to have the things that we require to be who we are in our place. Because what we can bring to the planet can save the planet. And that's my concern. So, when I can express this anger and frustration, it really is, I think we should make more progress. I think we should be farther along. I think we should fight so that we can have a place where we deserve to be heard, because we have something very worthwhile to share. So I mean, I don't know if I'm making sense here, but it really is a lot. It's not a bunker mentality. It's something that really ultimately is a sharing thing. And you know, and I recognize that our predicament is shared. And absolutely, I mean, I just, you know, if you read my essay, you'll see that, I mean, I think it's the same thing. It's the same thing. We're fighting um, the same forces. So I don't know. That's all I want to say. And I really, really appreciate our poets. I really, really do. John knows I love poets.
I want to add something to that. You know, one of the things that makes me hopeful is that we actually have helped to generate another generation or two of fighters. You know, the fighting that you did back in the late 1960s and 70s and 80s and into the 90s, that has translated as an ethic, as an ethical imperative to others who are your age and slightly younger, and brought us into struggle. You know, folks like Chuck also brought into the same kind of struggle at about the same time. And we have been in the process, I think, in the last several years of handing that struggle over to the next few generations. And it's not just one generation. We're seeing this among our grandchildren as well as our children. It is a tremendous relief to those of us who are older, because we know we're part of the cycle, and one of these days we'll be helping feed the taro.
So first, I just want to give a huge mahalo to the poets, all of you all. I mean, everyone on this panel is a poet except me. John, as a songwriter, is a poet. And also just to acknowledge the importance of Mahealani's what Noe just called righteous anger. You know, I mean, if we don't keep that, you know, so much of the narrative, you know, wants to force us into not being angry. And I think that John's, you know, the thing that he read from Baldwin of the, you know, the horror of the claim of innocence is related to trying to tell us that we shouldn't be angry all the time, you know, in addition to being loving to one another, right? So I actually want to just close, because I think it's connected to this, Pilini, just by reading the last paragraph of my piece in the thing, because I try to sum up what I'm talking about. So it starts with all of these things earlier that I've quoted from other places. Black Lives Matter, Kukiai Mauna, I am somebody, we are not American, fuck white supremacy, it's nation time, Kapu Aloha. Each of these rejects the primacy of property, ownership, plunder, and profit, and white supremacy. It's narrative that denies the beauty, love, and worth of our lives. Each also imagines a future where we are sovereign because we continue to struggle, where we learn to love one another, to love the land, and love ourselves over and over again, where we are sovereign because we choose the family and lahui of freedom fighters. What time is it? Nation time. So I just, you know, I think I wrote that because it seems to me that you know, we're sovereign because we choose each other and the struggle. And as long as we're in the struggle, we're living our sovereignty while we struggle for it.
And I really, really want to thank this panel for coming together, for bringing your mana'o, for being so clear, for being so incredibly valuable to our people at this time.